Now we're seeing the left. What do they point to as the reason for the spike in crime? Well, they want to blame it on the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding Americans, and that's just simply disgusting.
Joining me now, Senior Vice President of Gun Owners of America, Erich Pratt. Erich, here we are again talking about gun violence rather than human violence. Your reaction?
Well, I think you said it well, Natalie. Criminals do not obey the law. And that's why, even though Indiana has a red flag law, it didn't stop this guy. FedEx, sadly, has a policy, official policy, employees cannot be armed. And guess what? It didn't stop this guy. And to be honest, this fits the profile of 94% of public mass shootings. They occur in gun-free zones where the citizens cannot carry a firearm to protect themselves. As you were saying, gun restrictions don't stop bad guys, but they do discourage good people who don't want to break the rules. And it actually seems that that discouragement factor may have occurred here in Indiana, because there's now an eyewitness account of a worker at the FedEx plant who, because he couldn't carry on the job, he had to run to his car to get his rifle. And sadly, he wasn't able to make a difference. But imagine if he had a handgun on him the entire time and he didn't have to run to his car, then all those statistics you were talking about would have come into play. He might have been able to stop this mass shooter in the same way that a Texas churchgoer used his gun to stop a mass shooting in 2019, or the way a firefighter stopped a potential one at a South Carolina school, or the way a doctor ended a mass shooting at a Pennsylvania hospital. But unfortunately, FedEx, being a gun-free zone, prevented any good guys from stopping the bad guy.
And it's so sad we never get to talk about the facts of the case. Just like yesterday, right? Everything was about the systematic racism in policing, right? We have to abolish the police. Then we have a mass shooting. Who's the first responders? The police. Now it's abolish the Second Amendment. It's like you can never win. Everything is an extreme. Abolish the police, abolish the Second Amendment. What kind of message does that send to potential criminals?
Well, it's a terrible message. And quite frankly, we need to focus on punishing bad guys. I mean, it is the height of hypocrisy for the anti-gun left, and Joe Biden included, to be demonizing guns and gun owners the way they have been over the past couple weeks, when for a year the left looked the other way while rioters were destroying cities, murdering civilians and cops. I mean, remember the Summer of Love in Seattle, where the politicians just decided to let the rioters have their way, and they ran the police out of their headquarters. And remember how the left was early releasing criminals from jail all over the country and demonizing the police. They're still demonizing police. The police were retiring early in droves. And guess what? The murder rate, which had been on a downward trend for over 20 years, all of a sudden spiked last year. Go figure. And yet, now we're seeing the left. What do they point to as the reason for the spike in crime? Well, they want to blame it on the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding Americans. And that's just simply disgusting.
Well, it seems like there's a shooting happening now every day. We didn't have this under the Trump administration. Do you think that criminals realize now it's a pretty lawless country we're living in now? Migrants can cross the border illegally. There's no consequences. They can riot in the streets, burn down businesses. We never see any arrests in that way, or else they get bailed out by Kamala Harris. So do you think there's a lawlessness, this chaos now? Or is it, some people think too, we've just been on lockdown for a year, and so everybody's been inside and now people are acting out?
Well, and there may be a third option, and that is that with the media coverage of this, it tends to generate copycats. And we've seen this from past killers where they've actually wanted to one-up the previous media coverage. For example, the Sandy Hook shooter. Police investigators were aghast. They found in his bedroom a 7-foot-long spreadsheet. They said it looked like a doctoral thesis where he had documented all the previous mass shootings and the media attention generated from it. And it was clear that he wanted to be at the top of the list. And you see this frequently from these mass shooters that go out in a blaze. But we come back to the point, where do they go to do this? They don't go to a gun show. They don't go to a police station. No, They pick a place where they're going to be the only one who has a firearm. And if the early reports are right, I've heard that this guy was a former employee. That means he would have known that this was a place where guns weren't allowed. And obviously it didn't stop him. And that's exactly what the bad guys want. They want to be the only one with the gun.
Well, it's so sad that we're talking about this again, and yet we're not talking about what actually happened. Like you said, the situation, what did he know? Obviously, if he worked there, there's no concealed carry. And yet here Biden, everybody jumps to the narrative, oh, here's another example to support us taking away the guns from law-abiding Americans. So thank you, Eric, for the work that you're doing, still giving a voice for the Second Amendment, because they've already tried to come after our First Amendment. They're getting away with it. Now they're after the Second, and we just have to push back because it's our rights, where they're given to us by God and they're in the Constitution. So keep up the great work.
Thanks, Natalie. Thanks for having me.